Okay, just give me 2 seconds and I'll be ready to go. Share my screen with everybody. Let me know if you can see that okay. Teams doesn't show me what I'm sharing. Okay, that's great. So I'm going to submit an article and then walk it through the workflow from start to finish. And we'll show you some of the tools that Janeway has as part of that workflow. And then I'll try and answer any questions that you've got from there. So we'll start by submitting an article. So the first step in submitting an article for the author is to complete the author agreement page. This consists of 4 sections: publication fees, which your journal may or may not have. Some journals will use this to explain how their journal is funded, but some will list any APCs or anything they have in there. Submission checklist, where you can list anything the author needs to complete as part of the upload process. If you require them to format their article in a particular way, you can list that in here. If you require them to upload a particular type of file, you can list that in here as well. Copyright notice is the one of the most important parts, and it can be obviously customized. All of these can be customized per journal. In some cases, it will be right of first publication. In some places, it will be someone's throwing things around behind me. In some cases, it will be a full transfer of copyright to the journal. But obviously, each journal can customize that to their requirements. And then lastly, we have a request for any competing interests that the author might have. So any conflicts that they might have, they can put in here. So on the next screen, we're asked for some basic information about our article. Whoops, it's the 7th today, isn't it? 08, 2025. And they can put their abstract in. If people paste their abstracts in from Word, it will strip out all of that weird sort of Word crap that you often get when you paste into these HTML boxes. It'll strip all of that out, so you just get some nice, clean HTML. They can select an article type, and as editors, you can maintain a list of available article types for people to submit to. You can do that from the manager interface in Janeway by adding and removing sections. This particular journal has a lot of them, and some of them are a bit weird because they use them for collections like special issues as well. But it's things like article and book review and stuff like that. And you can add those. You can also make some of them, you can make them temporary. So if you wanted to, you can go in and you can mark them. It's not available for public submission. So you can still have articles in those sections, but nobody can add new ones to those sections while you're going through. Here's some keywords. And then we have some additional fields down here. So each of the journals can define any additional fields that they want the author to fill in during the submission process. A very simple example I have here is membership number. So a society journal might request a membership number. You can also have just a plain old text box for them to fill in, text area as well. And you can also create drop downs with different options. And you can create checkboxes as well. And those are controlled via the additional fields manager here. So we can create new ones and edit existing ones from in here, and we can reorder them as well by dragging and dropping them into the right order that we want. And you can collect pretty much anything. You can also decide whether they get displayed as metadata. So the membership number, for example, is not. However, the testing section based one does, so that gets displayed. And that gets displayed in the sidebar alongside the article. So once we've done that, we then get to add authors. So the person doing the submission is automatically added as an author, as you can see here. I can edit my details by clicking the Edit Author Details button here. I can also remove myself if I want to. This particular journal has credit taxonomy enabled, so you'll see this add role button down here, and I can select from the credit taxonomy which areas this particular author contributed to. So perhaps original draft writing, software, and data curation. And so those are the roles that this particular author has. And then I can go ahead and add other authors if I want to down here. So there's two ways of doing it. One is filling in this form. You can mark authors as corporations or organizations. We call those is corporate. So if it's an organization doing the publishing, you can mark them as corporate there, and that will display the affiliation rather than a person's name. But the easiest way is to search the ORCID registry. So if you know the person's ORCID, you can pop their ORCID into here. Hang on just a sec. Siobhan is trying to join. Hey, Siobhan, we're over on Teams. There's a link in the chat. Can you jump over there as well? Cheers. Sorry, that's my colleague Siobhan. She's going to join us now, so she's going to jump over. She was doing another training session right before this one, so if we thought about it, we might have combined them, but there you go. So we've added a second author here. It's Robert. The name is Robert Collins, but actually it's my colleague Joe Miller. I've just changed his name. And you can see that he has an affiliation here at Birkbeck, and we can add roles to his authorship as well, just by clicking on the ones we want. Interestingly, I don't have an affiliation on my account, so I want to go ahead and add that. So we can go to Edit Author Details, and you can fetch them from ORCID. So if the user has an ORCID like me, you can fetch them. I don't have any affiliations registered on my ORCID, so I'm just going to go to Add, and then I can search for my institution. So I'm going to search for Birkbeck, and it's going to pull up the Birkbeck record. So we're using the ROR registry. If you haven't come across that before, Research Organization Registry. They're basically ORCIDs for organizations. If your institution or the author's institution isn't in this list, they can create a manual organization just by filling in the details of the organization there. But for me, I'm just going to click Add, and I can put in if I want my position there. That's fine. So it's popped in my affiliation there. One of the bonuses of using ROR is that when two authors are at the same institution, we can be very clear that they are members of the same institution because we're using the ROR ID as opposed to a string of text. Birkbeck's a really good example of why ROR is necessary, because you can write the name of our institution any one of four ways, because we're called Birkbeck, we're called Birkbeck College, we're called Birkbeck College, University of London, and we're called Birkbeck University of London. But if we're using RORs, we know that these two people are at the same institution because they've got the same ID. So you can go ahead and add as many of the authors as you need, and you can reorder them using the ordering buttons down here. So if we want to move Robert up to the top, we can. And if we want to change Robert to be the correspondence author, we can. So that makes that change there. And once we're happy, we click Save and Continue, and we move on to the file upload screen next. I'm going to upload my test document here, and I'm going to upload a image file as well. Let's call this figure 1 and add that. So we've got our manuscript, we've got our figure. Might upload any other figures that we've got or any other data as well. If you've got a data file, you can upload those here as well. The text on this screen up here, and up here can all be customized from the submission management interface. So you can be very specific about what you want the author to upload as part of this process. So, if you want a Word doc or an ODT or an RTF or a LaTeX file, you can be very clear with them. That's what you want them to upload here. We have an optional screen for collecting funding information. It's turned off by default on all journals, but you can turn it on again through the submission interface, submission management interface. It does use the FundRef database. I've got it disabled because I'm running it locally, but you can search the FundRef database for a funder just by typing their name in here, and we can go to add funder manually if we need to and fill in the funder details here. And lastly, we get a review page to ask you to review your submission, check that everything looks okay, and you can write a comment to the editor at the bottom.
Andy, I've seen two messages. This is Joe Donnemeyer, that the screen is frozen back on Arthur information.
Okay.
We
I'll
haven't,
restart the share.
okay.
Let me know if that pops back up for you.
It's okay for me.
That's great. So we're on the main dashboard of Janeway here. We're looking at this as an editor. Other users will see this dashboard as well. Reviewers, for example, have a box. Copy editors have a box. I'm in both of these roles. And authors have access to this information. As you can see, I've made a lot of test submissions into this particular journal, and I've got a bunch of published articles down here for this journal as well. And I can do things like view the live article from there. But as the editor, I'm really interested in this one up here. This gives us a very quick overview of where articles are in the workflow, so we can see 2 in unassigned, 17 in review, and so on. You can also search all submissions by clicking on this button here, and it just takes you to an interface where you can search through them. You can filter by articles that you're assigned to manage, so you can see I'm the editor on these 2 particular papers, and stuff like that from here. But brand new articles that come in, Jamie will send an email to the editors letting you know the submission has arrived, and the articles go into unassigned, which is our first stage. We can see our particular paper down here, submitted by Robert Collins. We click view and it'll take us into the unassigned stage. So this is just basically a quick summary of the submission for the editor to look over. You can also download manuscript files from here and look them over. And we can see all the author information here. We can click out to the ORCID and see that user's ORCID. So you can see mine there. That's Joe's ORCID, not mine. I was going to say I didn't do that. That's Joe's ORCID, not mine. But you can click out to it. You can also click out to the ROR if you want to see the ROR page as well. So you can see the organization details there as well. Got a couple of options here, but the first one is that we need to assign an editor. So the editors are listed here. Janeway has 2 levels of editor, the standard editor role and the section editor role. And they differ in that the editor has access to all the manuscripts that are currently in the workflow, and the section editor has access only to the manuscripts that they have been assigned to manage. So there's different wording for it, but associate editor is another word that's used to describe them. We use the phrase section editor to describe them. But if you, they have control only of those articles that they've been assigned by a senior editor, essentially. So I can search through the list and I can actually find myself. I'm listed as an editor and a section editor, but I'm going to click this one and I can send an email off to this particular person and say, hey, you've been assigned as the editor for this article. And that goes away. So we can now see the Andy Byers as the editor for this paper. And we can move the article into review. So this is a sort of standard look for one of the management interfaces here in Janeway. You'll gradually get used to the layout. You have the main section on the left here, status information on the right, and then the action buttons down on the right-hand side here as well. And along the top, we have the workflow bar. So as the article moves forward through the workflow, you get new buttons along the top here. You'll have one for copy editing, one for typesetting, and one for pre-publication if you follow the full Janeway workflow. Journals can customize that. And if anyone's interested in having a custom workflow where parts of it are tweaked or removed, you can have a chat with us about that and we're happy to help out. So for example, we have some journals who use Janeway simply for peer review. So the articles are submitted and reviewed in Janeway and then they don't get published in Janeway itself. So we took the other workflow elements out so the articles don't go into copy editing or typesetting. And we have some that skip copy editing, for example, and go from review to typesetting. So that can be arranged if that's something that your journal needs. But we'll go ahead and we're going to follow this. There's a little mini guide here that sort of explains how to handle peer review in Janeway. So the first step is to add files to the review round. And we can do that by clicking add files here, selecting the files we want to send to the reviewer. And so for round 1, these are the 2 files we're sending out. I'm going to add reviewer now, and it's going to pull up the reviewer database for us. This journal has a massive database, and I'm running this on my laptop, so it can be a little bit slow. I can hear the fans spinning up on my laptop. They're starting to scream as it tries to pull all these people out of the database. So from here, I've got a couple of options. You can add a new reviewer just by clicking this pop-up here. If it's someone you know is not in the database, you can add them. But if they're in there, they'll be down here in this list. And there's some interesting information you can grab. So you can see how many active reviews a person has, how many when they last completed a review as well. So you can sort by that. So you can see I obviously completed a review on this person yesterday. This is my tech account. And we can also view their history as well if we need to. That shows you what they've been actively involved in recently. But we'll select this particular user. You can also maintain a list of interests for each user as well. They can maintain the interest list themselves, or you can maintain it for them by adding things into there. Very useful for when you need to search for someone with a particular interest. At the bottom here, we have some options. One is to set a form. So in Janeway, you can manage peer review forms from the review form manager here. We have one called default, and it has a series of questions. One of the things we can do in here is we can actually preview what that form is going to look like. So we can see there's a rating field, and there's the rating field there with a drop down. There's a review field that's just a text box. There's a checkbox and a drop down. And so we can add and remove things to the review form from here. And you can maintain a number of review forms as well. So if you have different questions you want to ask different people for different article types, for example, you could create a specific form for that particular article type. And you can select it from this drop down when you have more than one. There's an anonymity option, so you can do open, single, or double anonymous review in Janeway. If you do open review, you have the option of publishing the review against the article. So when people read the article, they can also see the peer reviews that came with it. And lastly, you can set a due date for completion. Janeway sets this to 56 days by default, but you can increase the default if you'd rather it be longer than that. And of course, you can just change the due date manually. That's not 56 days, by the way. Someone's changed that. It's the joy of using a test server. Someone's been playing around with the data on here. And then we get our templated email. So each of the journals can edit the template to have it appear how they like. You can CC and BCC people into emails as well up there. And basically what happens is they'll be emailed out and they'll click the link in the email. And I'm going to open up a private tab and paste the link in there. So I'm not logged into Janeway on this tab, but because I'm using the secret key login system, the reviewer doesn't need to remember their username and password. If you are using or reviewing sensitive data, you can force a login on this page, so you can require that users log themselves in. So if you're doing anything to do with medical data or anything like that, you can ask them to log in. But by default, we use the access code system, so they don't have to remember that. And then they can agree or decline to do the review. If they decline, Janeway will ask them to suggest someone else if they know of anyone who might be able to review the paper. In this case, I'm just going to agree. I can download the manuscript files here. I can edit all of them. So if there's maybe a large number of files, I can download a zip of all the files, and then I can fill the form in. And then we can fill the rest of it in if we like. And lastly, we make a recommendation. So Janeway has 4 recommendations from reviewers: accept without revisions, minor revisions required, major revisions required, or reject. So the reviewer will select one of those, and then they can
Andy,
someone
has just said that it has frozen for them again. I'm not sure if it's the case for everyone else. It is for me, so you might have to unshare and reshare again, unfortunately.
This is to the joys of using Teams, unfortunately.
So I'd quickly let you know.
Yeah, is it looking okay now?
I can't see it yet, but it might be my internet.
I can't see it either.
So I know my partner is also on a call right now. So you might be fighting over the Wi-Fi, but it seems to not be just me then.
This is great. Teams is the worst. Can you see it now?
I can't. It's a blank screen.
No.
Okay. I'm gonna do a full reload. Hopefully it won't kill the recording. I'll be back in a sec.
Worst case, I can try and continue it, but we shall see. I feel like this is when we need like some awkward elevator music to play. Yeah, apologies about that. It's a joy of using Teams at times. Hopefully, Andy should be back in a moment.
Maybe an Ozzy Osbourne retrospective would help.
Yeah, sure. Emily, feel free to ask any questions, or Emilia.
Can anyone see my screen?
No.
Right, something's totally
Um,
knacked. Do you want to give it bash, Siobhan? See if you can share yours.
yes. What stage were you at again, just for my reference?
Yeah, we just sent out a review and completed it. So from there, roughly making a decision probably would be good next.
Yes, I can do. Let me quickly share my screen. Here we go. Can we see that?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Rightio. Let's see. Am I on 180? Yes, I'm on 180. Even very exciting stuff because I haven't seen it yet myself fully. Yes. So the review has come in and it's been made, so we can now make a decision. Gosh, I think this is the first time I'm actually talking through with Andy watching me doing it, so that's very exciting for me as well. So at this point, there's multiple options. You could either accept the article and move it to copy editing. You could reject the article, actually, if it's no good, and share it with the reviewer, so with the author. Or you can request revisions or start a new review round. You quite likely end up requesting revisions. So in this case, I actually have one with incomplete reviews. This is another test article. Let's say we're going to pretend these are all completed reviews. You can set a due date for the revisions for the author and then specify the types of revisions and add in any notes. So I'm just going to pretend there are minor revisions here. Next. Oh, I should obviously add a date. I feel it'd be good if I did that. Yeah, at which point, as you'll probably have seen before at this point, you can also send an email to the author with any further information or choose to skip it. And you can see the revision request here. I'll just quickly log in as the author. Actually, I don't think I have to do that. Similarly, what would happen then is that the author can complete the revisions. You get notified as the editor, and they can upload a new file. I'll see if I can very quickly do that to show what happens after this. So I'm just going to pretend I am the author of this article, which I thought was this author, but I am clearly wrong. That was a bit embarrassing because I feel like this only happens when I'm screen sharing and never happens when I'm doing something myself. Yeah. Now, I think for the sake of the demo, I might just pretend that the author has done the revisions. So at this point, your revisions have come back to you as an editor. And again, you can either decide to move things into copy editing at this stage if they've been very minor revisions and it doesn't need another round of review. That makes it easy. Otherwise, at So at that point, you would click accept the article. If it is major revisions, you might want to open a new review round, and you'll do exactly what you've just seen before, where you add the files, add reviewers, and then go through that process. For the sake of it, I'm going to pretend that all is fine, and that we can email the author with the happy news of acceptance, which is always great. At which point you'd enter copy editing. So this works fairly similar to review, actually, where you can open a copy editing assignment and select a copy editor, select a file for copy editing, set a due date, and provide any notes to copy editor that you may wish to share. And again, you can send email. And now the copy editor can do their work. And I'll see if I can pretend to be a copy editor. So I've accepted it as a copy editor. The copy editor can now do their work. So what I'd have to do is download and yeah, and obviously this bit here, which are the copy editing guidelines, you can change as editors and make sure that there are different guidelines available. This is just a test journal, so it isn't as nice. Complete, there we go. So now the copy editing is complete. If we then go back to the article, so now as an editor, you can review the copy editing. You just download the file and check through it, see if everything is okay, see if there's anything particular outstanding. Depending on your workflow, if the copy editor makes any direct changes, you can accept the copy edited and move it into typesetting. Or you can reopen the task if there's anything you think the copy editor still needs to do or needs to do differently. Or what is likely most common is that you request your author review at this point. So now you again send an email to the author, who will then get again a similar sort of revision request where they can action all the copy edits and make any changes. The copy editor will then the author will then come back to you with again a revised manuscript, which you can either send back to a copy editor if needed, or at this point accept. I'm just going to pretend that has all been done. The joys of using a demo site is that sometimes some errors occur. But no, say that the author has done the revisions and that you are happy with the manuscript at this point. The only thing to keep in mind is that if at this point you would complete copy editing, the article would move into typesetting, we recommend making sure that any changes have been made to the manuscript at this point. And because it is usually most efficient to limit any changes being made as part of the typesetting process. But we're going to pretend all is well. And now we are in typesetting. Andy, could you just remind me, will we be using an external typesetter here or not?
No.
Okay, that makes it a little easier, because if you are working with in-house typesetting or sort of doing this in-house, what would normally happen is that you would see the files for typesetting, and I'll quickly see if I can find, here it is, an article with some content uploaded on it. Yeah, so here you would see the actual files you have available for typesetting if you're doing this in-house. So there is the copy edited manuscript and all the figure files, and there might also be supplementary files depending on what you're working with. So if you are creating either a PDF, a HTML, or an XML file in-house, it's quite simple. You only have to click Upload New Typeset File, where you specify the type of file it is, so PDF, HTML, or Galley. Presumably keep it public so it is visible to users at your website. and just select the file and upload it. So it should be relatively easy. If it's a PDF file, it should just be here. If it is an XML or a HTML file, if it has figure files, which this file has, that have not been uploaded, it will notify you here of any missing figures. So this file does have missing figures, and I can resolve that by going in here. And Janeway will then let me know the names of any files that are currently missing. So in this case, I am missing this one. I could either check if there is an existing file that has already been uploaded, select it, and just click this button. But say this file isn't already on Janeway, I can also upload it. Again, pick it, select it, upload it, and it will join its siblings on here. If there are a lot of figure files in a HTML or XML file and you don't want to do this one by one manually, which might be quite tricky on certain STEM journals, you can also zip all the files and upload them as a zip file. The only thing you'd have to make sure is that the file names, so the ones used in the galley, are the exact same as the files you're uploading, because Janeway will look at the zip file and try to match any of these to the missing image files. And if the names are an exact match, it can match them. And that makes it nice and easy.
So, Siobhan, if you jump over onto article 27037, which is also in typesetting, the one you were looking at before. 27037?
Yes.
So on this one, I've loaded up a Word document and enabled the Pandoc plugin. And so what Janeway is also capable of doing is generating the galleys for you, so you don't have to do it manually and upload them. Sometimes you need to tweak the manuscript file before you do it, but we have a generate HTML option. There's also a generate PDF option, which isn't displayed on this test server, but will be on the live one for you. If you click on that, it will generate an HTML. So it's taking the Word document and passing it through Pandoc, which then outputs an HTML for us. It will extract any images, tables, references, all that sort of stuff, nice and neatly into an HTML galley there. So if you just preview one of those, I think you might have clicked the button a couple of times, then we get the HTML view of the article here. So it's full of random nonsense and a picture of my dog and children, because it was the easiest test article to upload. But it means you can generate that HTML document directly in the platform, and we will be doing the same with PDFs as well. Janeway has the capability of creating a PDF with a cover sheet or a PDF without a cover sheet, so that would be up to you whether you want one or the other. And we've been using this process live for a bunch of our journals already. Relatively simple articles work quite well. Extremely complex ones, we can chat to you about how to run those through, but it can also extract things like encoded MathML. So if you've got MathML in your Word document, it can extract those as well for mathematics and display those as MathJax. And I think I've spoken to Joanna and Skye and Beth, and we're probably going to do a separate session that will focus on this part, how to produce galley files from within Janeway, and so we'll organize that with you guys so we can show you in a bit more depth how that would work, or maybe we'll record a video and send it out to you so you can just watch it when you're at your leisure. It might be a bit easier actually if we do that, but that will take you through the process a bit more in depth when we've got a bit more time.
Yeah. And I think if you have been impatient like me and accidentally clicked that button too many times, there is a delete option. Because I think like the Teams toolbar is exactly above my browser, so I couldn't see it was actually loading the page. I was just clicking it like a fool, which wasn't very smart of me. But yes, the same principle applies here. Yeah, I think that should be typesetting there. You can download, edit, view the file history, which can be quite helpful if you have made multiple edits and you want to reinstate any earlier versions. That is also possible, which I think gives a bit of safety of mind, peace of mind. Right, then if typesetting is complete, you can click complete typesetting over here.
One thing you might want to show them quickly before you jump forward is sending the article for proofing.
Yes. I was thinking there is something I'm missing because I'm out of my flow here. So say you've done the creating of the galley and you want to check with the author if everything looks fine. You can open a proofing round, which is relatively easy. You just click on assign a proofreader. The proofreaders can either be people who have been given the proofreader role, the editors of the journal, or the authors of the article. So in this case, I want to ask one of the authors to have a look. And again, we do the standard thing of setting a date. Please check the galley. Oh. Set any notes. And then sending the email. Yep, and I'll simply again pretend to be the author so I can complete the proofing task. Now the author can also preview this and see if there's anything that might be outstanding or anything they'd like to change or everything is okay for them. In this case, I'm going to say all is fine. The proofreaders can also upload any annotated files. So if they want to have inline comments on anything, it can also be done. But in this case, if it's just an HTML, they probably just want to give the last check and then complete the task. And again, it's why it's generally best to make sure that as many changes have been made during copy editing as possible rather than doing it as a part of typesetting. So at this point, because otherwise you'd have to make multiple new HTMLs, which is a bit more involved usually than doing the revisions on a Word document. Now the proofing is complete. So you could either assign more proofreaders if I also wished to have the other author check it. This can also be done simultaneously, so it doesn't have to be done one at a time. If there's any issues, you can either make them to the manuscript file or the author can do it, and you could create a new HTML file. If any edits need to happen, it's probably best to go look at that in more depth in the session Andy just mentioned, because I think going through it now would be a lot. I think for the sake of simplicity and for the sake of time, I might just pretend that all is in fact fine with this galley. The author has looked at it and is happy with how the HTML looks, at which point we can complete typesetting and move the article to pre-publication. So at this stage, we are effectively preparing the article to be published, and there are various checks that need to be made, or you may wish to make. The first one is the metadata. So you can check if the metadata is correct, if all of this looks right to you. In principle, this should hopefully all be what you expect that to be, as this should not have changed too much as you've gone. If you are using issue-based publishing, you can set the issue. In this case, we have already set a projected issue earlier on in the process. This could be changed if needed or kept the same. And if the issue doesn't exist, you can also create it. So there's information on that. Oh. Yeah, at this point, you could also verify the DOI now, because this is a test journal. Obviously, the DOI information is not working properly because this isn't actually connected to Crossref. I don't particularly want all my fake articles to be registered with working DOIs. That would be a little bit embarrassing. Ordinarily, what you'll be looking for is effectively for the status thing symbol here to have a little green tick. And what sometimes happens is that you might see something called hops here. You'd ordinarily only want to have 2 here. At the moment, there's a lot extra going on. You could either check on this page to see what's going on, which in this case is not an awful lot because it is a test journal, or potentially contact us to see what might be happening here, depending on exactly what is up. Yeah.
The basics of DOIs are the way that Janeway operates. You tend not to have to worry about DOIs.
Yeah.
So when an article is accepted, we create a dummy DOI, and then we register that with either Crossref or DataCite, whichever you guys are using. I can't remember which one it is. So we register that, and it's actually ready to go at that point. And then when we publish it, we simply update it with the latest version of the metadata, and mark it as published with a publication date. And so I would say 99.999% of the time, you'll go to that verified DOI pop-up and you'll see a green tick. If there is an issue with some of the metadata that Crossref doesn't like or DataCite doesn't like, then we might have to intervene. But generally speaking,
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty rare that I hear anything about it. But yeah, I think as long as there's a green tick, it's usually all good now. Where was I? Yeah, the selecting of the galley. So in this case, if you're using HTML, you just select your HTML here and set it. The only thing here, and I don't think they should be showing, is that you want to tick a HTML here and not a PDF, because this is what selects what will be shown on the web page to users. So when they visit the site, what they should be seeing, which should be HTML. You can now set a publication date as well. You could either publish now, or you could say, actually, this is to be published in a week or 5 days, or whichever you'd like. Select an article image. So this is sort of the header image, and what will also display for this article. I'll see if I have anything random there. Oh, let us play Lysa. Nope. Thought I set that. Yes. Nope. Not sure why that's doing that. Anyhow, that has been uploaded.
What was wrong there, sorry?
No, if I click upload, it just shows the same pop-up again. I'll look into that later. It's very minor. Yeah, at this point you can also set notifications of the publication. It does require you to set a publication date, because obviously the system needs to know when to send this email out, and for that it needs to have a date. So you can email any authors and any co-authors and let them know that the article is now live, and provide any further information that you may wish to set. So that is fairly straightforward. It's again another email field. Then if all of these are complete, again, you don't have to do the notifications actually, but it is usually quite nice to do, because people do like to know when their articles are live. You can press on publish. If you set a publication date in the future, it will then publish at the date you specified. If you prefer it to be published right now, it will be published now. And then there will also be some warnings here if there are any issues like no DOI and no keywords. If an article is peer-reviewed, it will always tell you that it has been marked as peer-reviewed. 99% of the 99% of the time, I'm sure that will be the case. Just in case it's an editorial, you may wish to change that, because those are not always peer-reviewed. And then the article will be live, and you can see it on the website. I will actually, yep, see if it'll do that. I think the publication date of this might actually not be. Might have set it in the future. I might have to edit that. Yep, and there it is. And now, if you've published, you can see it on the website, and you can share this. And that is the publication workflow. Andy, is there anything else I should be showing at this point? Anything else you wanted to cover today?
I think we've got a couple of minutes left, so you could have a quick look at the manager interface for submission and review. and general settings. Maybe you don't have to run through all of them, but just give people an overview of what they can control from the manager interface.
Yeah, it makes sense. I just wanted to check. So yeah, if you're doing any sort of journal configuration or setup or any journal management, you will probably be using this screen. So what we've seen before is all sort of workflow handling. This is more the journal itself. There are some general blocks on here. So there are the general journal settings which sit in here. This is sort of the very basic information, the journal name, description, ISSNs, contact information. Recommend having a scroll through these as well. I'm trying to think if there's any key ones. If you use Google Analytics, you can set it here. Login notices are sort of a registration all sits here. Andy, have you talked about themes or not?
Not with this group before, but
we're going to default to using the clean theme because it's the most accessible. That's our Ohio State guideline, so that's the theme that everybody will have.
That makes it easy. Lovely to hear, because
we've made some customization to the clean theme as well to make it a little bit nicer to look at as well for Ohio. So
yeah, that's good, because I was about to talk about that, but that is brilliant then, because I was about to say, if you haven't picked yet, clean is most accessible, but there we go. Don't have to do any of that.
We're required to meet those federal law requirements, so that's what we have to go with.
Brilliant. Wait, I clicked before saying what I was doing. So there's also the homepage here, which allows you to enable elements for your homepage. So say you wish to have an about block on the homepage or a carousel, the current issue. So it's kind of obvious. You can simply click add, and it will display this on the homepage. Let's see if it actually works on this testing journal, because I'm not sure. Yep. So the about of this journal is in fact that it is for testing, documentation, and general shenanigans. And we can now see this on the journal homepage. This is for general shenanigans. I think we can tell this is a journal I've made because it's full of shenanigans indeed. Another one that might be relevant for you, we can also always help with this, are the images. So from here you can set the header image, which is what used at the top, where you probably want to put your journal logo. What we call the default large image, which is what is used at the top of an article or in the carousel. What it pretty much just does is that it makes sure that if no specific article has been uploaded, if no specific image has been uploaded for a news item or an article, there's something for the system to fall back on to display. Similarly, there is a default cover. So say issues can all have a cover image, but you might not be wanting to make a special cover image for every single issue. So you can also just make one default one, and that's what will then display everywhere. The favicon is, should have clicked on that, is a symbol that would appear here, where now there's a little globe over here, or here there's some logos. That's what the favicon is. And that is one you may wish to set or not.
We can also set it across the board. So if there's like an OSU favicon, we can set it for everyone, so you don't have to do it manually each time. Yeah.
There's also all settings, which is a little bit harder to use. But if you're ever looking for a specific setting and you can't find it, you can try searching for it this way. I don't know. It's a lot of review things and submission stuff. I usually recommend having a general look around the journal and the general settings first before looking at all settings. I find that it's a bit overwhelming in the beginning, but it can be helpful once you get used to the system and used to Janeway. If you ever want to make any changes, if you want to quickly do it, to go through here, but it's a little bit more advanced.
As a bit of a Janeway nerd, it's my first stop whenever I want to make a setting change. Now I go to the all settings page because I created most of the settings.
Yeah, you'll know all the fancy names. Yeah. But no, you can, luckily, because I use it as well, but I never know the actual codes here, because unlike Andy, I didn't write these, but you can just search for them and generally they will show up if you have a little search. But again, if you can't find something, it's worth just sending us an email and we can always do it. The two other blocks in here that are quite key are review and submission. So This is where review settings is kind of what it says on the label, where you do review settings. This is also where you can set up sort of the general review help text. So we provide a default text over here, which gives some very general and broad instructions. You may wish to change this for your journal if you have your own text. You can also set some of the defaults here. So this journal uses the default review form as the default review form, but if you have different forms, you can say, actually, that's the default form. I'll show in a moment how to set forms. Default numbers of day for review, default review types. I think one-click access should be enabled for you by default, actually, because I think Andy mentioned that. And there are some other settings here: review guidance, support text, some things around sharing review. Yeah, I'd recommend having a look at this and reading through this at a later point, just because there's quite a lot on there. If your journal has any existing review forms, they can be put in through review forms. Again, it's what it says on the tin. If you want to make a new form, you can say to so this is what sets up the basic form. Now, obviously, you may wish to add all kinds of questions. You do this by clicking on Add Element, and then you can name it. So say it's and I'm going to say that this is a required field. They have to do this. I can save it. We do have some documentation on this available as well. And now this has rendered here in the review form. So if you have if you already have certain questions that reviewers have to ask, so that, yeah, that should be going to reviewers, you can put them in here and then make sure that they get them in those sets. There's all the kinds of types you can set. So you can set text fields, drop downs. Well, I always forget which ones they are. The moment I'm on a call, I forget what I can do. Yeah, so a checkbox, you can set all kinds of things in there. It's fairly broad. Yeah, if you need any help with setting up your review forms, if you have existing forms, you're also free to send us an email and we can offer any help when needed. Then the other part, and I think Andy mentioned this before, are the submission settings. So similar to a review, there are multiple things that can be configured here. One thing that might be of interest are the editor notifications. So who should be notified when a new submission comes in? You can either set it as all editors to be notified or specific editors. This can also be set up by section. So say you have a special book review editor. I'm going to say we have something called book reviews. Add section. So say we have a book review editor and we want to make sure this person is always notified when book reviews come in because they are the book review editor. You could assign them by selecting them here and then saving. And now they will be notified for this particular type of submission. Again, it can save you a bit of time if there are certain content types that always have the same people assigned. You don't have to manually go through that and just set that up to be automated, which is quite pleasant. Yeah, this is also where you turn submission on and off if you wish to do so. And you can provide some of the submission information here. This can be edited from multiple places, but the text will always, so whether you edit, say, the submission checklist or the focus and scope from this page or from here, they will always show the same page, same text. So you don't have to worry about this being out of sync. It displays in two places because it can both display on the main website. So when an potential author is browsing your journal website to decide whether to submit, they may wish to read this, but they may also wish to still see this when they're actually submitting. So they just doubly know what it says. The text for that will be drawn from one source. You don't have to worry about updating it in two places. I think that is quite nice. The other thing is, so Janeway does have a set of sort of default standard submission fields that you can turn off and on. So competing interest, copyright notice, etc. You may wish to make your own field, so any specific questions you like to ask of authors, which can be done through additional submission fields, which again, it's fairly straightforward. You can put in the question, put in the type, the order at which it should be, so like how far down the process it is, and whether you have any support. There, I'm trying to think, a lot of key bits are in here. Oh, one thing that might be helpful for journal editors to know is, so say every now and again you might get an email going that of sort of an email by someone saying, oh, I can't see this, or this doesn't work for me, or I am trying to do a revision but I can't see something. It's a fairly common thing. What you can do through alt journal users here is click Control, which allows you to work on behalf of the user you are now controlling. So it's almost as if you are logged in as this person. So you could either click things for them if they're really struggling, or you can see what they are seeing. And especially if they're saying there's any problems, this can be quite helpful. So say you have assigned someone a copy edit and the copy edit is saying, I can't see this task. You can log in as them and check if it's actually there. And I find that quite helpful if there's any issues arising, just to have a good idea of what someone does and doesn't have access to, which can be quite helpful for any troubleshooting. I think that's those. Anything else immediately relevant that comes to mind for you, Andy?
Not really. I think that's the basic. You've gone through the basic stuff that people will need immediately when they start using it. So I think it should be enough for now.
I'll jump in here a little bit. This is Joanna from Ohio State, to just say that this was super in-depth and great, but I just want to reassure all the editors, if you didn't do it before, you're not going to have to do it now. So like, we're not going to say, oh, guess what, you're doing your own author proofing or something like that. Like, we did a lot of the things that were do a lot of the things that were demonstrated for you as part of our services. So we're going to continue to do that. Like, that's not changing for you. So your workflows with us will remain the same, basically. So I don't want anybody to panic and think like, oh, am I going to be responsible for X, Y, or Z thing? No, none of that's going to change.
Cool. Does anyone have any immediate questions? I'm sure if you don't now, you'll have 100 later on, but if you have any, we can try and answer them now. We are planning a Q&A session, so I mentioned in the chat that we can give you access to a demo site. So what I can do there is I can create a test editor account and send that to Joanna, and she can pass it on to anyone who wants to log into the test journal and play around. And then from there, as I say, we'll be having a Q&A session. I think it's next week. Just check calendar. Yeah, Tuesday the 12th as well. So we'll be able to answer any other questions anyone has there as well. Yeah, the forms, just answering a question from Rachel there, the forms in Janeway and the forms in OJS are not a one-to-one, so we can't migrate them. So those do need to be recreated in Janeway. So this might be a good time to sort of go over those and make sure you're happy with the forms as they are. The process is relatively simple, and we can help with that as well.
Yeah, that's something we can support too. This is, again, Joanna from Ohio State.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it's something I'm also happy to help with. I hope Andy doesn't mind me offering that one up. But no, I think as long as you are certain of what needs to be migrated, it's a bit like moving. You don't want to be moving things over just to chuck them out in your new house. The same goes for forms. No point migrating a form that is about to be made obsolete. But yeah, we are happy to help with that. And I think, Joanna, I think on your side as well. So as long as we know in advance that those forms exist and need to be migrated, that can be dealt with.
Great. That's cool. All right, I'm going to stop the recording now.